Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Raja Nouri from Microsoft hosting another Project Professional 2013 Tips and Tricks session. We're lucky to have Kenneth Steinis with us. Kenneth?
Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Tips and Tricks session. As Raja said, my name is Kenneth Steinis. I'm the founder and managing partner at Sensei Project Solutions, and also a virtual technology solutions professional with Microsoft, which means I work very closely both with the folks in the field, such as Raja, and also the engineering team in Redmond. And most recently, author of the book Proactive PPM with Microsoft Project 2013 for Project Server and Project Online. And what we're going to cover today, resource workload leveling, is actually straight out of this book and our e-learning as well. Just briefly about us, we're Microsoft's 2014 Partner of the Year for Project and Portfolio Management. That's a global award and we're very proud of. We have done literally hundreds of deployments with Project Online, Project Server, and trained thousands of project managers and team members in the process. And our team, of course, is fully certified both on the technology and also on the discipline of project management. So we've been doing quite a few of these recently, and the one today, as Raja said, is resource workload leveling, which I'll introduce a little bit more on the next slide. And then we have coming up on the 19th of February, we have Microsoft Project from Any Device with Cloud Apps. It is introducing the new Cloud App model and showing how we can use or get access to Microsoft Project data from our iPads, our phones, and through SharePoint applications and apps in Project and so on. So that's one of my all-time favorite topics right there. A little bit of introduction here on, or setting the stage, if you like. A lot of people still think of Microsoft Project as being that desktop scheduling engine. And really, it's grown into a complete end-to-end project and portfolio management solution. And I'd like to simplify it a little bit and talk about these building blocks of PPM right here. So up front, the Microsoft PPM will handle project intake and prioritization. It'll also handle resource capacity demand management, budgeting and cost tracking, project planning and collaboration, and project status and portfolio reporting, and then, of course, the overall governance. The core of the topic today fits into the project planning building block. However, it also impacts and is impacted by the resource capacity demand building block. So I want to try and just put that in context a little bit up front here of the overall resource management process. A lot of times, resource managers are asking questions such as, what's the balance between capacity and demand? What they're really asking is, do we have unused capacity or are we over-allocated? They also want to know which projects or assignments are causing these over-allocations, which projects are consuming the most resources, who the top resources are in terms of volume of work, or where we have work coming up in the next 3 months that hasn't yet been assigned to named individuals, or what project people are working on the next 12 months, and so on. So these are some of the questions that we get from resource managers, and I'll show you some screenshots here, kind of what we usually see them giving them. But you have to imagine that all this data comes from the Microsoft Project schedule, and the resource leveling piece is very critical to getting this data right. So as a resource manager, I might want to see my resource availability as per one of the questions here. How am I doing by role, by team, by department? Do I have any over-allocation, and which months and which individuals are over-allocated? Or what is the work that's in the pipeline that hasn't yet been assigned to resources on my team? So the example here shows an infrastructure developer role with 9 or 10 new projects coming in that have not yet been staffed with that role. Or where do I have the greatest over-allocation in my portfolio of resources and projects here? So these are typically the types of things that resource managers are looking for. So in that context of the planning process, we tend to think of long-term planning for projects and resources as being done at a generic level, meaning by role. We typically don't want to say that I need Bill, Bob, or Joanne on a project in 2018. We want to say I need a business analyst, a developer, a process engineer, and a project manager, for example. So generic roles and resource plan is what we do long term. However, Once it's time to plan those projects out in the near term, and near term could be 3, 6, 12 months, depending on your organization's definition and planning horizon, then we typically go to named individuals in a project schedule, and this is where resource workload leveling fits in. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Just one thing to put this in context is, if you think about a resource in your organization, take Johnny here, for example. Johnny might be available at 100%, Microsoft calls it max units, at 100% to do project work, or 80, or 50, or 75. But let's just say 100 for the sake of this simple example here. But as Johnny's manager, I might assign or allocate Johnny at 75% to project A and 25% to project B. So we want to keep that in mind when we're doing resource workload leveling. And there are some slight differences here, whether you're doing it on the desktop only or against an enterprise environment, which we'll explore as well. So just keep that in the back of your minds as we go through this. All right, so what is resource workload leveling? Resource workload leveling, in a nutshell, is a process that ensures that the demand on your resources doesn't exceed their availability. There's a very simple couple of screenshots at the bottom here that shows us that Johnny has been assigned to 2 tasks. The first task is a 5-day task, and he's assigned at 100%. He's assigned full-time. And the second task is a 2-day task, and he's also assigned at 100% here. So you can clearly see that Monday and Tuesday, he's working 16 hours if he's assigned 100% those 2 days. So in this case, probably what resource leveling would do is move the second task out, depending on a few factors, but let's say in this case it moves the second task out to the following week when Johnny has availability to work on it. And as you can see, that pushes the date in this case. So in a nutshell, that's the idea, but there's a little bit more to it than that. You can schedule the work according to priorities. You can do it on a single project, and you can do it across multiple projects. But regardless of all of that, we're really trying to make sure that resources are not over-allocated, or at least minimize that over-allocation in a portfolio of projects. So as we go and look in Microsoft Project, and by the way, this functionality has been in the tool for many, many releases, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 releases at this point, but some of the functionality has been enhanced over the years, of course. If you want to find resource over-allocations, you can go to any resource view, and you will see that the resource is showing up highlighted in red. And most recently, Microsoft added the little burning man in task views that shows you in the indicator column that we have over-allocations on a task here. Excuse me. Let me jump out to Microsoft Project and show you what that looks like. So here I have a very simple little training schedule here for the purpose of showing you guys resource leveling today. This is Project A, and Project A has a couple of deliverables, deliverable completion, and so on. And you can very quickly see that these 2 tasks right here have over-allocated resources. I can see that by the red burning man in the indicator column. You can also, at a glance in the Gantt chart, see that Johnny is assigned to 2 tasks in parallel at 75%. Which means, of course, he's working 150%. Let me show you a couple of other views here as well. If I go to my resource graph, and I go to look at Johnny here, you'll see that Johnny is in fact over-allocated Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday on this particular project, and you can see that he's maxing out, he's peaking actually, at 150%. You can see that on the bottom here. I like the resource usage view. That gives me, in my opinion, the best view of what's going on. I can see that Johnny is assigned to task 1, 2, 5, and 6 at 75% each. And because he's doing 2 in parallel, he's peaking at 150. On the time-phased view on the right-hand side, I can see that the individual assignments are not over-allocated. You can see that he's not over-allocated on task 1, nor is he over-allocated on task 2. But he's over-allocated because of the combination here of allocations. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to go back over here. Let's pick up the slide here for a second. So a couple of things to keep in mind. When you think about resource leveling, pick which role you're playing. if you're the project manager, then it's typically your responsibility to manage resource allocation within or over allocation within an individual schedule, so one schedule at a time. However, if you're in the PMO or you're a resource manager, you may be responsible for over allocation between projects. So with that in mind, let's put on our project manager hat first and say, I'm a project manager. I just want to do resource leveling on one project at a time. If you're in an enterprise environment, it's very important that you, on the login screen, uncheck this checkbox here that says Load Summary Resource Assignments. If you don't, then it will load all of the resource assignments for Johnny on all other projects, and it will level around that. And that's not what we're trying to accomplish as the project manager. As a project manager, we're trying to allocate the 75% or 25%, whatever, that we've been given for Johnny for this project. So hopefully that makes sense. And feel free to type questions as we go, guys, because I know that sometimes this gets a little bit confusing. If you're using desktop only, then this you won't have this option here because you are just doing one project at a time or the projects that you have open. So again, if you're a project manager, only open one schedule at a time and uncheck Load Summary Resource Assignments. Then here's the manual process, the prerequisites, if you like, before we start using the built-in functionality. If you have been allocated your resource at a percentage that's less than 100%, then you want to make sure that you set that max units, in this case it's Doug Brown at 60%, that you set that max units so that we know what we're working towards. So if I know I'm working towards 60% of Doug's time for this project, then I can look at the next column here, which is my assignment units, and say, well, I really can't assign Doug more than 60%, so I should fix the 80 and 100%. And then even after that, you may still see a peak that we're peaking at, in this case, 170%. So that's the manual process, which I'll show you here in just a second. Actually, let me show you that now, and then we'll go back to this. So I'm going to go to my resource usage view, and I like to expose the max units column, the assignment units, and the peak columns, because they give me a lot of good information here. So let's say on our project that we're project A, so we have Johnny for 75%. So I'm going to type in 75% for my max units here. That is what I am leveling against. Next, I'm going to check that I haven't assigned Johnny more than 75% on any individual task, and sure enough, I haven't, so that's fine. But I still have an over-allocation, again, because we have multiple assignments on the same day. All right, so keep that in mind. Then we're going to talk about the automated functionality. So once you've done that, we can start looking at how the automated leveling functionality will work. There's basically two main methods that's being used here. The first method is it will delay a task until the resource has time to work on it. That's the example that we saw in the screenshot earlier, and that's repeated here. It will delay the second task until Johnny is available to work on it. That's the one we like. The second option is to split a task and fit it in a long list of tasks. You might have a 40-hour task that you split into 10 pieces, and every Friday afternoon you spend 4 hours on that task. I'm personally not a big fan of that because it doesn't tend to be a good fit for how we do work. But that is the other option, and we'll see where we set that. A couple of exceptions that we have to understand here. One is if you set your resource assignment above the max units. So in the example earlier with Johnny, if you assign Johnny at anything above 75% to an individual task, it will ignore that assignment because it's assuming that you have made a deliberate over-allocation to meet a certain deadline, for example. So if you have assignments that are above max units, it will not level those resource assignments. It will not change the assignment level to resolve over-allocation. So it won't bump that percentage up or down. Okay, that's also not done here. So just keep those in mind. Let's look at the options. When you go in to do resource leveling, you should always go in and look at the leveling options first. The first option you're presented with is whether you want to do this as an automatic level or manual level. You definitely want to do this manually. Otherwise, it's going to level every single time you add a new task, change an estimate, add a dependency, anytime you change anything. So you definitely want to do this as a manual controlled exercise. The next thing you're asked for is to decide your leveling sensitivity, looking for over-allocations on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month basis, and so on. And that's really going to depend on your specific scenario. I find that day-by-day is typically a good option for IT or anybody doing resource capacity demand management. Week-by-week can be okay, but sometimes you can have 40 hours worth of work scheduled Monday, Tuesday, and then nothing the rest of the week. So I tend to like day-by-day. So that means we don't care if you work 5 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, as long as your daily allocation doesn't exceed 8 hours, for example. Next, we can clear leveling values before leveling. That's always a good idea so that we start fresh every time. You can level the entire project, or you can level a date range. I tend to level the entire project, even if you're not done building your schedule for phases 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so on. The bottom half here is where we decide how to resolve over-allocations. First of all, the leveling order, this drop-down here. There are 3 options in here. You can either do by ID, standard, or priority standard. ID means it would just go by numbers in the schedule, which doesn't make any sense. Standard is a standard algorithm that calculates the risk, perceived risk per task, and it takes into consideration your slack as well. And then priority adds on top of that the ability to prioritize the tasks in your schedule. So we tend to use priority standard as the best option here. The next 5 checkboxes here, I usually recommend leaving these unchecked when you're doing your planning, and then checking the first one during project execution. Let me explain. The first option says level only within available slack, meaning it will not move your milestone dates and your dates of the project, but it will try to redistribute the work in between as best possible. That's usually something you want to try and play with when you've already started execution, so you don't shift your dates. The next one says leveling can adjust individual assignments on a task. That means that if 2 of us are working on the same task, it might schedule my work first and then my colleague's work 2 or 3 weeks from now. Which, if you're like me, if you assign 2 people to work on something, it's usually because they're working on it together. So I tend to not check this checkbox. But if you're okay with splitting the assignments for different weeks for different people, then you can certainly check this checkbox. The next option, leveling can create splits in remaining work. That is the option I mentioned earlier, where it would chop your task into small bits and fit them in wherever there's room. Again, I don't like this one. The next one is leveling resources with proposed booking type. If you haven't yet committed somebody and you want to still level them, you can certainly check this checkbox here, and you'll do the leveling as if they're committed. So that's a good idea if you're using the booking type option in project, booking type between proposed and committed. And then level manually scheduled tasks. Manually scheduled tasks are relatively new, and just by the nature of manually scheduled tasks, I tend not to level them, but you certainly can if you are using those. But for the sake of simplicity, I recommend keeping these unchecked during planning and checking the first one during execution. All right, so let's go look at it. So I'm going to go back to my leveling Gantt here. So again, this project right now is scheduled to finish on March 5th, and you can see that we have over-allocations on tasks 1 and 2, as we also looked at a few minutes ago. So to get to your leveling options, we go up to the resource ribbon and leveling options here. And here are the options that we just covered. So here you have your minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month. Again, I'd only recommend day by day or week by week. Those are really the only 2 valid options here. And in the leveling order dropdown, you have ID only, standard, and priority standard. So we're going to leave this just exactly the way it is here. That's what we had in the screenshot a minute ago. I'm going to click OK. Now, you do have the option, if you're in a resource view, of leveling one resource at a time, and some people recommend that. I'm not a big fan of that myself. I tend to like to level everything and see what happens, and then assess the impact from there. So I'm going to choose the level all option right here. And when I do that, as you will see, change highlighting comes on, and this task got moved out here. The blue bar tells me what it is after leveling, and this brownish bar right here tells me what it was before I leveled. So what project did was it applied a leveling delay of 2.26 days, so elapsed days. So it applied a leveling delay on this task, which pushed the start and the finish. As a result, that also pushed everything down here to a March 6th finish. So now we're finishing March 6th instead of, I think it was the 5th before, something like that. So let's go look at the resource usage view for that. So now Johnny is no longer highlighted in red, as you can tell, and we have a nice distribution of work out here. Everything looks great. However, our sponsor might say, you know what, I'm not really okay with that. I'm not really okay with shifting the date. Do it again, but this time do it within available slack. So let's try that. I'm going to go back to my resource ribbon, and I'm going to clear leveling. I'm going to clear leveling for the entire project. That's the other thing I like, is it's very safe. If you don't like the results, you just clear the leveling, and no harm, no foul. So then I go back into my leveling options, and I say, well, do the best you can, but do not move my end date. Level only within available slack. I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to level all. And now it's going to tell me that it's not able to resolve fully the over-allocation on February 17th. I'm going to say, okay, I was kind of expecting that, so I'm going to say skip all. And you'll see it still applied a delay here, so 1.29 days. So it did something. Let's look at what that something was. So now, instead of working 12-hour days Monday and Tuesday, which is how it was set up before, now we're asking Johnny to work one 7.5-hour day, one 10-hour day. So that's a lot better, I think, than what it was before. So if you think back to the slide earlier, I said we're either going to eliminate over-allocation or we're going to try to minimize it. So in this case, we're choosing to minimize over-allocation because the sponsor said that it wasn't an option for us to move the date. Okay? And Raja, if there are any questions in the comments at this point, that's great. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on because I want to show this in a different setting as well.
No, Kenneth, we don't have any questions at this time. So folks, if you have a question for Kenneth, you can go ahead and type it into the conversation window, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question at any time. Thank you.
All right, so in the leveling Gantt view, let me just explain what you're looking at. The tan Gantt bar, so this guy right here, shows me what it looked like before I leveled. The blue bar shows me what it looks like now after I've leveled. And then the underscores show me either the delay that's been applied or the free slack that's available. So in this case, there is this underscore here is the delay that was applied. Excuse me, actually, that's the free slack. My apologies. And no, it's not. It's a leveling delay. I looked at the wrong thing. And up here, you have the free slack. You can barely see it because of the link here. They also changed the colors on me in the latest release here. So that's how to read this particular Gantt chart. Now let's talk about how you do this with across projects and in an enterprise environment. So an enterprise environment is a little bit different because you have to compete on resources, compete for resources against other projects. So think of it this way. If a resource, let's say Johnny again, is available to do project work at 100%, you may only get a 80%, 75%, 25% allocation of that resource's time. Let's say that on your project, you get 80%. So now we have to go in and make that adjustment in the max units column, and then we can split the assignments if we want that person to work on multiple assignments, split them 40-40, for example. The trick here is that in an enterprise environment, your resources are always going to come in at 100% or whatever your administrator has set the max unit as. So that means that every time you do resource leveling or you want to see over allocations, you have to change max units to 80% or whatever the number is. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like in an enterprise environment. I'm going to say no to this. I'm going to launch project, and I'm launching into a project online environment, and I'm making sure that I uncheck load summary resource assignments here. Uncheck that. And then we're going to take a look at in this case, it'll be project X and Y and a master schedule. So let me open up project X first. So here I have project X. You can see that I've assigned myself to a number of tasks here. And as a result of working 75% on this task and 75% on this task, I am in fact over allocated. So we can see that here just on project X. Let me show it to you in the resource usage view.
Kenneth?
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt. The refresh is just a tad behind. So would you mind slowing down just a bit so it can catch up with when you're speaking?
Absolutely. Absolutely will do. Okay, so in this project, project X, I've assigned myself to about a dozen or so tasks. And you'll see I come in at the default max units of 100%. Hopefully you're seeing that now. And I can see a similar situation to the schedule before, but I'm only showing this one project. That's really what I wanted to demonstrate here is I'm just looking at this one project. So let me close this and open the master schedule so we can level across projects here. All right, so Raja, I'm opening up an XY master schedule now. If you would just let me know when that schedule comes up on the screen, then I have a better feel for where we're at on the link meeting.
Okay, it is up there.
Okay, so here I have the same schedule that we looked at a minute ago, Project X, as well as a Project Y. So Project X and Project Y, I have similar assignments on both projects here. So now because I'm showing two projects side by side, Project X and Project Y, I see a lot more over allocation here, a lot more over allocation. So I'm going to switch over to my resource usage view, and I'm going to show you that now I am, instead of peaking at 150%, I'm peaking at 300% because I have two projects open with the same allocation. So again, I'm looking across projects on this one. And I can prove that to you by inserting the project column. So the project column will tell me where these assignments are coming from. So hopefully this makes sense. Now, if I want to do leveling against these two projects, if I just level as it is, they both have the same priority, then it will level, it'll go back and forth between these two projects. However, if I choose to do leveling based on priority, I'll get a different result. So I'm going to switch back to my leveling Gantt here for a second. And I'm going to insert the priority column. And then I'm going to pause to make sure that you guys are seeing this. So I'm paused. I just inserted the priority column. If you would just let me know, Raja, that you're seeing the priority column here. Sounds like we have a slight lag on the link today.
Yes, Kenneth, I can see it now.
Okay, great. So now let's say that Project Y is a higher priority project than Project X. This priority scale goes from 1 to 1,000, and 1,000 means do not level. So I'm going to say this is a priority 600 project. So the higher the number, the higher the priority. So I've just made this project a higher priority. Now when I go into my resource leveling options and I choose priority standard and uncheck level only within available slack, I'm going to go ahead and do my leveling. Just going to expand this guy here too. I'm going to say level all. And now it's going to level between between these two projects. So let's look at Project Y first. For Project Y, it applied a 15-day delay on identified project stakeholders because that was the first gap where we have availability here after we pushed this one. So there was a little bit of pushing going on within Project Y. So let's collapse Project Y. Maybe. There we go. Now see Project X has been delayed quite a bit. Because it's not as high of a priority, it got pushed by 127 days here and 45 days here. In fact, I have to scroll out to the right to even find it. So here it is. It's now been pushed off to the side because we're competing for resources. So that's how you would do it between two projects. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let me close this. I'm going to say no, I'm not going to save anything. And I'm going to open it again with one more change. This time, when I log back in, I'm going to choose to load my summary resource assignments across the entire enterprise. This means I'm now bringing in not only projects X and Y, but everything else that's in the portfolio. So let me open up that master schedule again, and then I'll pause, make sure we're there.
Okay, so it's up.
Okay, great. So now, I'm still only looking at my tasks here, but if I go over to resource usage and collapse the unassigned work here, okay, I now see that I'm at 310% instead of 300%, and that is because down at the bottom here, there's this guy that says, this guy that says other projects and commitments. So this is basically saying you have been assigned to two other projects in the portfolio, the Burbank website upgrade and the network development deployment project, and they have you assigned at 737 hours, 238 hours for a total of 975, and that adds up to your peak for the current period that you're looking at. So this shows me now bringing in everything in the portfolio. If I was to do resource leveling now, it would push my projects X and Y, push those out to accommodate the projects we don't have open, the Burbank website and network development deployment. So you can see you got to be a little bit careful about opening one project at a time as a PM, or if you're going to do multiple projects or just one, make sure you don't have the load resource summary assignment checkbox checked. Okay? All right, I want to make sure we leave some time for questions here as well. We usually get tons of questions on this, so let me have them. I know that some of you have struggled with this. If you've struggled with resource leveling or you have specific questions, please ask them now.
Kenneth, would you like me to unmute everybody in the audience? People might be having difficulty
yes,
with that.
please.
I can do that, and then if we get background noise, then I can, take another action accordingly. So hang on a second. Okay, everybody should be unmuted now. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask it just by speaking or typing in the conversation window. Thank you.
And while you guys are typing and thinking about it, just keep in mind those prerequisites. I really would encourage you to make sure you uncheck that load summary resource assignments, but also do the manual steps before you use the built-in leveling. That will really get you much, much, much better results.
Okay, I'm getting an error message saying that the unmute action could not be completed, so let me try again. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I muted you by mistake, Kenneth. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is traditionally an area where we've had a lot of frustration, but it really all comes down to just understanding exactly what the tool is doing. And if I'm surprised there are no questions, but it must mean that we've done a good job of the walkthrough. Okay, let me show you one more thing. If you were to do one resource at a time, you would, instead of choosing level all, you would choose the level resource option. And then here you can pick which resource you want to level. In this case, I only have one resource in this project. But this is where you could do one at a time, which some of my colleagues recommend doing. But I find that it takes a lot longer, and you have to go back and forth, and you might have to level an individual resource multiple times based on what the results of somebody else came out at. So.
Hey, Kenneth, we're getting some feedback that this is exactly some of the folks in the audience are doing things, and they're also saying that it's very clearly being explained. So thank you for that.
Great, glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. There's also more tips and tricks and recordings available both on our website and in the various social media here. So I definitely encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever your preferred social media outlet is. That would be great. And then keep in mind that we have the app session on the 19th. And again, I'll do a short introduction to that here. With Office 2013, Microsoft introduced the ability to have apps inside of Word and Excel and Outlook and SharePoint and Project, very similar to how you use apps on your phone today. And so what I'll be doing in this presentation is just showing a couple of examples and the concept, showing it in Word and Excel first to get the idea. And then we're going to look at what the different options are for cloud apps for Project and SharePoint or Project Online. So again, that's on the 19th of February.
Kenneth, we have a question from Wayne. Would you like to read that in the IM window, or would you like me to read it for you?
I'll go back and read it here. Let's see. As an enterprise project manager, should you just be considering your own projects when leveling, or also taking into account projects that are managed by other project managers? Well, Wayne, it's a good question. It really varies from organization to organization. Typically, a project manager has been given an allocation of a resource's time. We usually put it in the project management plan, the Word document, that I need these 3 testers for 50% of their time for the month of July, for example. So if you've done that, then the resource leveling activity is all about managing to the allocation that you have been given. And so it's not really your job to worry about over-allocations caused by other projects if other PMs are not doing their jobs. That's usually what the resource manager is supposed to do. However, since it might impact you, it definitely helps if you run some of the reports that we saw earlier, run the reports to look and make sure that the resources on your project are not double or triple booked elsewhere. So I would say from a resource leveling technique perspective, you just focus on your project. But from a project management perspective, I would go look at the various reports and see if you have over-allocations in the portfolio. Great question. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for attending today.
Okay, just a couple of things from the logistics perspective. I'm not sure, Kenneth, if you have any other material that you would like to share, but I wanted to let everybody know, just the way I've typed it in the conversation window, that I'm recording this session. I'm happy to share the link with you. I am sensitive and careful about not blasting emails to clog up your inboxes. So please send me a quick note at my email address, or connect with me on LinkedIn so I can share the recording link with you. That's number one. And number two, I have shared some information about earning 1 PDU for today's training session for your continuous PMP certification requirement. Search for the event ID project webinar, and then you can claim that PDU for yourself. So just wanted to let everybody know that. Kenneth, we have another question from Brad. Would you like to read that, or would you like me to read it for you?
I'll go here. Could you go over again how to detect which projects would have your resources assigned? Which projects would have your resources assigned to their projects? Okay, Brad. I'm assuming you're asking the question from a portfolio perspective, so a project online. So if that's not the case, please add that to the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to answer it as if you were talking about an enterprise environment. I'm just going to log into an environment here and show you that. So let me just make sure, Brad, that I'm answering the right question. If your question is, where do I go to see, okay, in an enterprise, where do I go to see what resources have been assigned to? I am going to pull up a couple of the reports that we use and see if I can answer your question here. Most organizations that do a project online deployment also do a lot of reporting around that. We like to use these resource heat maps here. Here's one example of where, for example, if I own the DBAs in the organization, I can go look at my DBAs and I can immediately see that Mark is over allocated, and maybe Mark is on one of the projects that I just assigned, that we just used in the example. So then that tells me which resources are in trouble. Then I go to a different report and say, okay, I just want to focus in on DBAs as an example here. And I want to see, and who was the resource we were looking at? Look at that again. I think it was Mike DeFelice. Why is Mike over-allocated? Well, Mike is over-allocated because he's assigned to both the Colorado website design project and the defect tracking system upgrade. And on that project, actually I think it was Mark, but you get the idea. On that project, Mike is working on these 6 tasks on the Colorado website design project. And in defect tracking, he's working on these 10 tasks and so on. This is one way you can do it. You can also go into the Resource Center in Project Online and click on the Resource Assignments link, and that gives you a similar view. I like this better. It's a little bit more interactive, easier to work with. In addition to that, you also have the ability to go look at where you have work that has not yet been assigned. And let's stick with the DBA example here. So if I own the DBAs, I can see here that I have 6 upcoming projects that are asking for DBA hours. And in February, it's specifically the Veritas project, the Coulter project, and the Zurich database upgrade project. Those 3 are asking each for 160 hours of my resources time. Am I answering? Go back to the question here, Brad. How to detect which project will have your resources assigned. There's one more thing here. You can also go to this planned work trending here. This will tell you which projects are consuming which resources. So in this report, I get, it's kind of like a stats report. It looks across the whole portfolio of where hours are being spent. If I want to look at it by role, for example, I can go to my DBAs again, and I can see that the DBAs are being consumed on these 12, 13 projects right here. Or I can go to the individual projects and see what type of roles they're consuming. Or you can update this report to show named individuals, of course. All right, let me pause here. Brad, am I answering your question here? Hopefully I am.
Yes,
okay.
Brad says yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, go back here. Well, Raja, that's everything I had planned today. I'm happy to stay on, of course, to answer more questions. But again, February 19th is our next one.
Yes, thank you, Kenneth. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to remind everybody that that if you want a recording for the session, either send me a quick email with your contact information or simply connect with me via LinkedIn. I'm going to put it on LinkedIn. I'm sensitive to not sending too many emails to you. But happy to share the recording with you. Also claim your 1 PDU by searching for the event ID project webinar on PMI's website. That is something that you want to do for your continuous PMP certification requirement. So happy to share that with you. Also, for the 19th, for the next webinar, I'm going to be sending you, actually I can share that with you now in the conversation window as well, a link for registration. I think that will be helpful so that the marketing team can do some sort of a follow-up or survey or something like that to understand how effective these are and what is your constructive feedback so that we can improve them. So if you don't mind, you're going to get one email from me about that. Kenneth and I are also interested in knowing your preferences as far as, what are some of the topics that of interest to you that we can host in the future. I'm happy to continue this series in the future if this makes sense to you. We had approximately 40 people last time. We had approximately 30 people this time. So it seems like there is some interest here, and I'm happy to continue doing this. And I'm hopeful that Kenneth will be able to come in and share his experience with all of us. So that's it. I'm going to stop recording here in a second. Let me see if there are any questions. Hang on a second. Oh, Kenneth, there's another question from Chuck. Do you want to read that, or would you like me to read that to you?
Let's see here. Chuck, if a PMO person decides to level resources across projects, will it function as a report or actually change the resource assignments? It will. If you're talking about a PMO resource opening a master schedule like what we just did, it will absolutely do that leveling if the person saves, of course. When you open multiple schedules inside of a master, you get the option to save at the end. And if you save, then yes, it will actually change those resource assignments in the individual project plans. Absolutely. And thanks, Chuck, for that comment, the last one there. Appreciate that.
All right, Kenneth, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. I've shared the link for the February 19th webinar. So if you're interested in attending, please go ahead and click on that link and register yourself. You should also have an invite in your inbox for the 19th. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully this was a good use of your time. Let us know your feedback. Send me a quick note with your contact information or connect with me via LinkedIn so I can share the recording link with you. Great. I'm going to go ahead and